Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm very excited to be joined today by Greg Sanders, who is the chairman and CEO of RDS Capacity Solutions. How are you doing today, Greg?
Doing great, Andy. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Absolutely. Today we're going to be talking about TIA and legislative actions and several key areas today. Okay. And, it's been great talking with you, Greg, offline, and I was looking forward to having you on the show. To kick things off, I'd like to give a special shout out to our sponsor, CyberFuels. If you'd like to reduce the amount of money you spend on fuel by 26 to 95 cents a gallon, reduce emissions at combustion, and reduce repairs, please be sure and click on that link below. So to give our audience a little background about you, Greg, can you tell us about your professional journey and what inspired you to do what you do today?
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick short story. So I grew up in a family trucking business that my dad had, and working through high school, during the summers, I just remember being what they call a lumper.
Yeah.
I was taking these, 75-pound mail bags and flipping them into a post office off of the back of a truck. And it was a good workout. So it was a good practice. But as I got out of high school, I went to college in the Bay Area, University of Santa Clara. And then my dad had a rule, couldn't get into the family business. You had to go do something else. So I worked for an accounting firm for a couple of years, Arthur Anderson, had a great time. But at some point, you wanted to, he whetted my appetite young in life. So I knew I wanted to get into the business. And then he had rule number 2. I had to go to an area where we didn't have an office location and get it up and running. Fortunately, we did not have any presence in Southern California. So as a young single kid, I can tell you that's a good place to be. So
right. Yeah, absolutely.
I felt blessed. And then I realized real quick when I started learning about the industry that not only was it a good place to be for a young single guy, it's a good place to start your career in the logistics business because it had a little bit of everything down in Southern California. So
right.
lo and behold, my dad sold the business to Landstar in 1994. And then I just was infatuated with the industry and I couldn't get it out of my system. So I stuck with it. He sold the business to Landstar. I worked for them for 3 years. Then I wanted to get some asset-based experience. So I worked for Schneider National, the Big Orange Machine for 12 years. And really, I feel like I really got my MBA in trucking, if you will. And then I kind of ventured out into the private equity world a little bit, working for companies, private equity firms that represented transportation companies. So trying to get, the other side of the equation is how do investment people look at supply chain and companies in that arena. And it was an era where a lot more private equity money was coming into the business. So I had a real good opportunity there with a few firms. And then today, 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to come down to Southern California to be the CEO of RDS Logistics Group, which was a asset-based provider in Southern California that did various asset-based services, cross-docking, drayage, dedicated trucking, yard management. And when I came down, there was a hole in our portfolio, and that was the ability to really serve people outside of California because all our trucks were local. And I had some pretty good brokerage experience. And so part of the deal was I wanted to put some of my own capital in and start a brokerage entity, but utilizing the RDS brand, if you will. And I've really been infatuated with brokerage more so over the last 15 years of my career because I'm more of a commercial guy by heart, not necessarily an operator. And as a commercial guy, you just never want to say no. You always want to say yes to the customer.
Right.
Just being a non-asset provider, you have so much more flexibility. And if you can build the right operation out with the right connectivity to the right partners out there, you can really perform some great services. And I'd argue you can outperform a lot of asset-based companies in certain segments of the business. And so that's where we are today. We're the company RDS Capacity Solutions is going on its 4th year of operation, but we've had some tremendous success. And part of our success really came from starting out and doing it right. And part of that is being part of the Transportation Intermediary Association, which is the TIA. And I've been a member of the TIA since about 1993. But more importantly, as we were starting up this new business, the TIA is really in business. It houses about 2,000 members in this industry that are 3PL transportation providers. And it really provides the blueprint and the guidelines on how to start up a brokerage, how to do it right, and how to excel through different phases of your growth. So I'm just, I love being part of the TIA. And two things that I'm passionate about. One is helping young people in their careers move along in their supply chain journey, if you will. And
Right.
the second passion is dealing with legislative issues in Washington to make sure they have visibility to what we deal with in our industry and how we can improve it and make things better. So it's a continual education process because, every 2 years or so, there's a new cycle of folks coming in and out of Washington. So as the TIA, you have to really keep educating the folks in Washington.
Right. Absolutely. It's a small world. I worked at Arthur Andersen.
Oh, you did?
International supply chain practice. So they sent me overseas to start up distribution centers and facilities. And It was so much fun. I was young in my career before I got married. They had me traveling every week, basically all over the place. But it was a lot of fun, honestly.
It really was. And I know I just give you a quick short story. So when I graduated from college, they were I worked from the Arthur Andersen San Francisco office, but they were looking for some young, cheap kids that they could go over to Zurich, Switzerland. We were I was on the information system side of Arthur Andersen.
Yeah.
Accenture, but our goal was to automate the Swiss stock exchange, if you will. So, and I didn't know nothing about nothing. All I was cheap. And so I had the opportunity to go over there and work for 2 years.
That's awesome.
When that project ended, I came back to the United States and I realized, my next assignment was a hospital in South San Francisco. And that's why I told Dad, I'm ready to go into the transportation business. So.
Yeah, exactly. No, they put you into some serious situations and it's kind of sink or swim, and they get you for a good price. But on the flip side of that, you get such amazing experience, frankly. Yeah, absolutely. So no regrets from that for me. Regarding the TIA and legislative actions, I'm going to ask you about 3 particular legislative actions and get your feedback on the reasons for them and their effects on the trucking industry and kind of what's going on. So first one, unauthorized double brokering. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's really become a problem in our industry. And we tried to put some legislation in place back in 2012 with MAP 21. If you go back, there's a section in MAP 21 that really has to do with unauthorized brokerage activities. And part of that is operating as a intermediary without the proper authorities in place and so forth. So, like, for example, a motor carrier would accept orders from customers, and if they couldn't move those freight on those on his trucks, he would then outsource and broker it out. And without proper authority, he may not have a brokerage license. And
right.
In other words, as a carrier, may not understand best practices of being a broker, right? And so he'd outsource it to another carrier, and then that carrier would then rebroker the freight again, just trying to find the right carrier at the right price. And so as the original broker on the load, you lose total control of the load. You lose everything about your safety selection process that you put in place as a broker has now gone down the chain, and things happen in this industry from a safety standpoint, from a theft standpoint, and you lose control of the transaction.
Right.
All we're asking the FMCSA is to adhere back to MAP 21 on those regulations and realize how can we enforce that in the industry? Because it really gives a bad name to the brokerage industry if you do it right. There's over 15,000 brokers in the country, right? Only 2,000 are members of the TIA. So we're constantly plugging and trying to get more members to be part of the TIA, because if you're a TIA member, you know what your stance is on double brokering. Double brokering, just to be clear, you can have arrangements, double brokering agreements between 3PLs, and you can do it legally. It's when you don't do it legally, when you do it with unauthorization between the various parties, that's where
bad things happen.
Bad things happen, but also intentional bad things happen. That's where some crime and some theft can come in. So it's a really big thing in our industry about cleaning things up, just to make sure we do things right. And we constantly fight that battle. And that's just a legislative thing where we can work with Washington directly to get them educated on what we agreed to in 2012. And let's make sure that we're enforcing that.
Right. The enforcement of it. Got it. Yep. Makes sense.
And I'm going to lump another thing in there, Andy. I'll take number 3, which is the dispatch services companies. And I'll lump that into the same one, same kind of classification, if you will. Dispatch service companies have really popped up over the last 5 years. And really, they don't have to have any authority or any licensing by the government. They act as a bona fide agent to the carrier community. But in reality, what they're doing is arranging freight transportation between shippers and carriers. So they're effectively acting like a broker, but they don't have the right authorities in place, or aren't required to have the right authority in place. And it like unauthorized brokering, it can create some safety issues and other issues in this industry. For example, there are a lot of foreign-based dispatch services companies that operate in the United States, and they're picking loads off of load boards. And there could be some sensitivity of operations. For example, if a broker is doing business with the Department of Defense, right? And then this dispatch services get a hold of that particular load, it could be very sensitive from a national security standpoint. So we're just trying to educate Washington around dispatch services companies and say, if they're going to act like a broker, then they need to be have the authority in place to operate as a broker, and need to carry the proper bond and the proper insurance to operate as a broker.
Got it. I see how those tie. Yep. Yeah. Very good. Well, makes sense. Makes sense to me. The next one I want to ask you about is the Motor Carrier Safety Selection Standard Act. What is that about?
All right. So this one gets a little more complicated, if you will, but you should think of it about this way. So each day there's about 3 million shippers and about 20,000 3PLs that are selecting carriers to do business every day.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yet from a federal regulation standpoint, there is no safety standard requirement in place for the selection of those carriers. For example, we're as consumers, and if we're going to get on an airplane, right, and I'm going to go from Oklahoma City down to Dallas, you probably got 4 or 5 airline choices, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One thing you don't consider is whether that plane is fit to fly. That's one thing you don't really consider, because I got American, I got Delta, I got Southwest. Well, the government makes sure these planes.
That's right. Yes.
As a consumer, I don't have to worry about that.
Right.
I have to worry about price and times and other things, but I don't worry about safety.
Right. Exactly.
When selecting a motor carrier, there is no safety standard, right? So, over 90%, right around 90% of all carriers that are out there, and there are over 500,000 carriers out there, have not been audited by the DOT to give them a rating, a safety rating. So they're just not rated, right? So you have this broad population that are not rated out there in the industry. So we have to then come in as 3PLs or shippers and develop our own safety standards to make sure that we're hiring safe carriers, right? But my safety standards may be different than the next guy's safety standards. And all we're asking the government is provide a situation where you determine the fitness status of a carrier. And it's either safe or it's not safe. We call it like a red light or a green light, you know,
Right.
And that's really important because there is some deeper data that the Obama administration was trying to create with this CSA, you know, these basic safety scores.
Yeah.
And they had done a good job putting the data together and really were moving the ball forward. They just need to kind of refine that data gathering and data analysis to really, when they do come out with fitness scores at some point, it really makes more sense to the individual carriers that get rated, right? But that's going to take a little bit of time for that to take place. In the meantime, we're asking the government just to step in to determine the fitness of a carrier, whether it's okay for me to hire or not okay for me to hire. That's all we're asking. As a 3PL or a shipper, what our requirements are is we want to make sure the carrier has proper authority, has proper insurance in place, right? Those are two of the big things that that are important in this safety standard selection, because then over time we become a safer industry. We weed out the people that don't reinvest back in their equipment and want to be safe out on the highways, and it's just super important for our industry that we keep moving the ball forward in this space. This one, the motor carrier safety selection standard, is actually attached to a bill, HR 915, and it's moving its way through, but it's changed bill numbers several times, and we're just keep lobbying to Washington to try to find the right vehicle to get this thing passed and for Congress to take this bill seriously.
Right, right. Absolutely. Well, I love the work you're doing with TIA. And safety is extremely important. You know, things have been done throughout the years to make trucking more safe. And, you know, with electronic driver logs and different things that really make sense. Yeah. And so I've seen it, lived it, been inside of it for 25 years. So what are the best ways for people to connect with you and learn more about your company, Greg?
Well, to learn more about me, you can just contact me at greg.sanders@rdscapacitysolutions.com. Send me an email. I'll be happy to share as much information as I can. The TIA, TIAnet.org is the website address for our industry association. I'm very passionate about that one, and feel free to contact the TIA direct. We would love to solicit as many members as we can to be part of our group. The bigger we get, the more we can, more power we have from a lobbying standpoint. And then once we get you aboard as a member, we'd love to educate you more on the TIA PAC and get you more on the political action committee side, where it's fun. It's actually, you learn different aspects of how this country run when you actually get up to Washington and walk some of the halls up there and understand what goes on in their head while we're operating down here thinking, hey, you guys you're so out of touch, but they're dealing with things that in their mind are important. And if we don't bring that to their attention, it'll never get on their important list. And that's what we got to do. That's our mission.
Right. Absolutely. So this last question is one that I ask all of my guests.
Yeah.
What would you say as a final word of advice for our friends out there listening or watching today?
Oh boy, I'd say be safe, live in the moment, and eliminate your distractions. You'll be very effective living in the moment.
Absolutely. Be safe. Very, very important for everybody, right? For the public, for the drivers. It goes both ways. Safe. Everybody be safe out there. I love it. So, well, thanks again for coming on the show with me, Greg. I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it.
You bet. That's going to do it for this episode of the Trucking Tower Podcast. Thanks for joining today, and we will see you guys again soon. Take care.